Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Boroda, Pranta, Naswitha, wherever you are, however you're joining us. This is section 2 of the MCAL for 2022 with Textilii, and we are working through our shawl. I wanted to take you through section 2, and hopefully you've had good success after section 1. This is my working piece that I'm doing with you. So this is the section 1 area. And it is that nice purple, slightly variegated purple, so it goes in and out, creates these darker and lighter textures, which is really nice from the Woolly Tango. And for this second section, I've chosen this. It is a sort of neutral, a goldeny neutral, with a bit of colour flecks in it that are going with my other yarns. But it is recommended a slightly neutrally variegated yarn for this section because you are focused on the idea of the owl and how our main character is associated with the owl. So if you are choosing colours or using colours that you've chosen, then this would be the nice place to put that variegated or neutral. And over here in my other samples, you can see this one, I'm using a lace weight for the demo one, but these ones are knit in fingering and in handspun. This one is handspun, and this is a mottled grey section after a dark grey. And then this is a fingering weight Shetland type yarn that is used for the sample square. So you can see where we're going. So this is the pattern we are starting to pick up. It is one that is called feathered on your pattern. And it is a little bit more complicated. We're increasing the complexity a little bit. So the last time you were working a decrease on one row, that was the right side row, and then on the next one over, you were working the yarn over on the wrong side row. What is going to happen now is you are going to work both the decrease and the yarn over on the same row, and then the wrong side row is like your little reprieve. It's when you're going to be able to have a break and just purl across to set your stitches. So that's where we're at. But it does make things a little bit more difficult. You can lose your way just a little bit easier if you are not keeping track. So we've got a few tips and tricks. One of them is to remember we've still got our right side marker on the bottom of our shawl. And what I've done for this new section, which I didn't have on the other section, is I've put in stitch markers just to mark the place. They are not for any other reason than to mark the sections so that I can work smaller sections at a time. And then if I feel like that section doesn't look right, I can go back and correct that section before I move on. So it's a way of checking and moving forward. You don't have to do this. It's just that if you're feeling a little bit like you don't want to get to the end of an entire row, which is loads of stitches, and then find out you've got a mistake back at the beginning, then you can just check as you go. And as you do your purl row coming back, then you will be able to count those stitches in between. And I think approximately 12 stitches in between each stitch marker. So I have marked on the pattern where you might insert the stitch markers, but it is your choice as to whether you use them and where you place them. Okay, so stitch markers was the first tip and trick for this section. The second one is just to mark your pattern if you're not already doing that. So this is my rough pattern that I'm working to, and I do two things. One thing is I mark my line that I'm working on just with a ruler, or in this case it's a simple piece of paint tape that doesn't stick too much, and then I move it up as I go. It just makes it a lot easier to track the stitches, and especially when it is more difficult to track across both the yarn over and the decreases in these rows. It just helps guide my eye a little bit. The second one is I've just enlarged the key to the information on the bottom of my sheet. So I've just written it in there to remind me that that one's the yarn over. It's an obvious one, but then you've got the knit two together and the slip slip knit, which are difficult to remember which one is the left leaning and which one is the right leaning. So I have them right here for reference quite quickly. And then the other one is the knit three together. Those are the four main stitches aside from the knits and purls that you're using. And I just find it really useful to have these two the knit two together and the slip slip knit identifiable quickly for when I can't quite remember which one's which. So that's quite useful. If you're following your pattern by text, then it will tell you. But if you're using the chart and you're working along and some of them are leaning to the left and some of them are leaning to the right, then just useful to have that enlarged for you. So as in the first section, always knitting the first two, that's your border stitches. Then you've got your yarn over, this starts your chart. I'm knitting one, and then I'm going to do the slip, slip, knit. So I'm slipping purlwise 2 of those stitches. Then I'm putting my left needle through the front of those 2 stitches on the right needle and knitting it. That's a left leaning decrease. And then I do a yarn over directly after that and knit one. Yarn over, and then I'm doing a knit 2 together. So that's taking the 2 stitches. I'm going to be careful there not to capture that 3 stitches. So 2 stitches together and knitting them. Then I've got a knit, yarn over, and then a knit 2 together again. So you see I'm slipping my right needle through to the back, through the stitches to the back and knitting those together. Let's do that again, make sure, so the yarn over, knit 2 together like that. Okay, find with this beautiful yarn, but sometimes it splits and gets caught. Okay, this is the Malabrigo Silk Paca. It's lovely, really nice yarn. Okay, so I've got knit 2, yarn over, knit 1, decrease, yarn over, knit, yarn over, decrease, knit 2 together, knit, yarn over, there should be. So I've already, already catching, that's a yarn over and then a knit 2 together before I do a knit. And then I'm doing a slip, slip, knit. SSK. Then I've got the yarn over, knit 1, SSK, yarn over right after the decrease, knit 1, yarn over before the decrease. This is the knit 2 together, knit 1, yarn over, knit 2 together, knit 1, and I'm at my first marker. I just slip that over, and then I clearly know I've hit the marker on my chart. It's quite a useful reference, and so I can guide my eyes to do the same again. So just to take you through one of the sections that you might be following if you're using the markers. So you slip your marker and you do your slip, slip and knit. So you're taking the left needle through the last 2 stitches that you slipped and knitting. Then you've got a yarn over to a knit, slip, slip, back through those to knit, yarn over, knit 1, that's the middle of the section, and then you reverse that, so you go a yarn over to a knit 2 together, so you're picking up 2 of those stitches, knit 2 together, knit 1, yarn over, knit 2 together. That's where you just have to make sure I'm using this very fine yarn, knit 2 together. before you knit one on the end before you hit the next marker. So that's your main stitches for the repeat in this section. I'm at the end of the row, and I'm just going to remember that I lastly put my yarn over, and then I knit those 2 border stitches before I turn my needles. Okay, and then coming back, all you need to really do on these rows, because they are pure purl rows, and remember that when you're reading from left to right, you're on the wrong side, so any of those blank squares are purls instead of knits, and you are knitting those first 2 border stitches before you move your yarn to the front, and then you start purling. And this is a nice reprieve, because the rows where you're doing the decreases and the yarn overs at the same time are quite heavy going. Yes, they are tough rows, and the purl row gives you a nice reprieve, but also sets all of those stitches to create a pattern that is just a little bit flatter when you look at it. And I have done this on purpose. I've spaced it out because I just felt like it made the feathery wing pattern just a little bit more obvious. And if you're working in a solid color yarn like this one here, then it's going to be a really nice dominant pattern looking like diamonds that sort of flow together to create those owl-like feathers. If you're working in a variegated, once it's blocked, it will be a bit softer, but you'll still have that diamond feathered effect, which is the point of the pattern for this section. Okay, I'm on row 85 of the pattern now, and it's one of those rows that includes the knit 3 together stitch. What this does is it creates the point in your diamond. So there's one right there, you could see it. It's quite hard to see in here. When you look at this, the sample one, you can see it right there. Yes, and it happens just at that point between those 2 diamonds. So you've got your yarn overs coming up to the point, and then you start the new diamond. So I have already knit my 2 border stitches, yarned over for the edging, knit 5, and again, just a reminder, I'm on row 85. Now I brought my yarn to the front because I'm going to yarn over, knit 3 together, and yarn over again. So to knit that point together, I'm going to take 3 stitches through my right hand needle, through 3 stitches, as if to knit, and then bring it through. So they're all together. So you see those 3 stitches coming to a close. Okay. And then I yarn over on the other side, and I knit, and then in between this, you're going to hit the stitch marker at stitch 5 of 9. You're going to hit the stitch marker. Now you're going to say they were orange in the last one, and now that's a pink one. So that's there to remind me. I've got all these orange ones as my little 12 stitch sections, but this is a reminder just that I have added in stitch markers as I've gone. So I mentioned that earlier in the video, just a little pop-up. Just remember that if your sections are growing, add in where you need to add. And then I knit 4 on this side of the stitch marker to make my 9. And then I've hit the point where I'm at a yarn over, knit 3 together. So bring my yarn to the front, and then put my right needle through 3 of those stitches. This can be a little bit fiddly. It's good to have pointy needles. Stretch your knitting out a little bit if you need to. Knit those 3 stitches together. You see them, all 3 of those there together. Yarn over on the other side, and then knit between 2, 3, 4, 5 to your stitch marker. Okay, so that is the knit 3 together. Once you've got that alongside your knit 2 together and your slip slips knit stitch, which is the 2 decreases, left leaning and right leaning, all the stitches to do this section of the pattern. And I hope to see you again for section 3. Stick with us. You know, it is getting a little bit trickier, but this is not beyond your ability. And I think that when you realize how you're going to get this lovely diamond pattern, and this is an example of it just in hand spun. It's a bit thicker, it's a bit chunkier, but you can still see the softness of the diamond there, the obviousness of the diamond in this one, which is the Shetland 4-ply, fingering weight type yarn, and then this one, it's there in this lacy open diamond pattern to create those little owl-like feathers. And I will see you for section 3 next week. Ta-da!